Welcome back to Composition and its Allies. My name is Barney. I'm a classical composer, and this is a channel for composers as well as performers interested in composition. French harmony exercises is for composers and performers of all levels who want to go back to basics. We're focused on root position chords. I highly recommend this course if you are struggling with orchestration or fugue. Let's begin. All right, so we have a new exercise up for French harmony exercises. It's a bass exercise. So previously we were listening below, we had the soprano, and now we're gonna have to hear above, which is a totally different skill. So first thing we're gonna do is gonna write by hand. The reason why we write by hand is it's much quicker. What do you mean? It can be, no, when you're writing by hand and you have a mistake, you just do an erase and then you recopy. It's much quicker in the long run. I'll give you in the short run, you're in the computer, and it gives the illusion of immediate progress. But when you do things in the computer, first of all, you're going to be using that computer sound, it's going to deaden your ears, and you're just not thinking, you take the lazy route. So if you are serious and you want to be doing this long term, you have to do it by hand. This is non-negotiable. Of course, the one exception is if you do not have hands or some real ailment where you honestly cannot do something by hand, then you got to figure out some viable alternative. But for the rest of us, we're going to do it by hand. So please excuse me a couple minutes while I copy this exercise by hand. All right, so that was pretty painless. Now, when you copy down by hand, non-negotiable, unless you don't have hands, but when you copy down by hand, make sure that you verify you did it correctly, because this is one of the danger zones where you rush because you're so excited or so anxious, but you gotta save yourself time. Just go a little bit slower and really make sure you have the fermatas, make sure you have any of the details. When you go on to first inversion, second inversion, you're gonna have to go extra carefully because the bass is gonna have different numbers, okay, and accidentals, especially for modulations, and if you get one of them wrong, it's just the whole exercise is thrown out of whack, okay? All right, next thing we want to do is we want to sing the exercise. When it comes to the soprano exercise, this is like non-negotiable because there are 3 possible harmonizations you can have with the bass, usually, all right? But when it comes to a bass exercise, I still think it's really important because you want to understand how the original bass function. And think about the beauty of Monteverdi, like just, oh, so exact, so beautiful, but yet so primitive in a way. So this is kind of like a flavor of that. You have a bass that's going to be jumping around, leaping around, but it's exact. All right, so I'm going to sing through it a couple times. Si, fa, sol, mi, do, fa, sol, mi, do, fa, si. Sol, re, mi, fa, si. Sol, do, fa, si, mi, do, fa, si. Okay, and your goal is just to make it natural, okay, because you'll be surprised about how difficult it is to actually sing these exercises if you don't have like real training, vocal training, despite years in the conservatory. All right, so I sang that a couple times. Let's imagine I did so. And next thing I want to do is I want to get the Roman numerals. I just want to get the exercise done. Yeah, but the way you speed track progress is you do this preparatory work so we notice patterns. So let me go ahead and write those Roman numerals. Si, fa, sol, mi, do, fa, sol, mi, do, fa, si. Sol, re, mi, fa, si. All right, so I just did that. Notice I kind of double checked because in my haste, I put the wrong Roman numerals. You don't want to cause confusion because confusion is incredibly expensive. Now, putting the wrong Roman numeral, I think it's not going to ruin everything, but it will set you back for some time and you don't want to do it. And just take the opportunity to make sure that you have the correct baseline. Otherwise, when you submit your work, if you choose to submit your work to anyone, the person cannot look at anything because we're trying to verify that you have done it on the conditions that we specified, okay? So notice that since I did the Roman numerals, I noticed a couple of things, many things actually. First of all, we have a couple deceptive cadences, all right? There's a specific voicing for deceptive cadence. You can check out the tutorial I have here on YouTube, but just as a reminder that the leading tone goes up to the tonic, other two voices have to move in opposite direction to the bass, all right? So that's kind of predetermined. Now, how I voice it, we'll have to see, but there's certain rules already baked in here. Also, we have this possible sequence. So, sol, do, fa, si, mi. Okay, so we see a pattern in the bass, so it is highly likely that we're going to want some kind of predictable pattern in soprano as well. So what is our strategy? Today, we're going to go for the hard stuff. Okay, we're going to nip it in the bud. We're going to get it done. One of the things I have to say is, like, when you first start, if you're new, you may not even know what are the hard parts. It all seems hard. This is why you got to do the exercises on a regular basis. If you just start here and there, you dabble, you watch a video, and you don't do the work, you're not going to make anything meaningful progression. So though I hope the video is helpful, you have to take action and you have to do the work. You have to do the exercises, and what you'll find is that you do the exercise and like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I felt like I understood the video, and now, but that is part of the blood, sweat, and tears that you have to put in if you really want the benefits of mastering basic harmony. All right, so we're going to get the cadences for phrase 1. Notice that under phrase 1, for that cadence, it cannot possibly be a perfect authentic cadence. Perfect authentic cadence is going to kill the piece. Now, when we have modulations, you can have perfect authentic cadences in other keys. It helps mark the form, but that is not the case here. So therefore, we're going to need an imperfect authentic cadence. Now, if you've never heard of cadences, then this exercise is probably too difficult for you. So I encourage you to maybe follow through to the end, but do some other work on other channels where you can get that basic baseline of like intellectual information. If you're a little bit rusty with the cadences, just check out the professional level CHORDS tutorial I have on my website when you get a chance. So this is an imperfect authentic cadence. So we're going to need either the third or the fifth in the soprano. Now, just so you know, later when you get to first inversion chords, this will kind of get phased out. It'll be more likely you'll have some kind of inversion, but for now, we have either a third or fifth in the soprano. Now, in general, the fifth in the soprano often does not work on a 1, especially at the beginning of the exercise. So in this example here, notice I do a 1-5-1, which is a certain formula we may do to start the exercise. And notice that it gets a very boring soprano. It's doing F, so it's functioning more like a pedal. This is more suitable for an inner voice. Now, the one exception I want to mention is that for the ending of an exercise, there is a formula for a plagal cadence. We see this especially in minor keys where you have tonic, tonic, tonic in a soprano. And in that case, it can be a very pleasing effect to have just a stationary soprano, but that's not the case right here. Therefore, we're going to try the third in soprano. It's une valeur sûre, if it's in French. It's just something that almost always works. All right, now we're going to get across two phrases. Now, this is especially important for orchestration or fugue. So, for example, when it comes to fugue, you may have seen some of the fugue videos I have on this channel. And for example, in my second fugue from Salembo, my opera ballet, I have a second exposition in the subdominant. But what I had to do is I had to voice that first, so all the voices, the registers, the disposition, and then work backwards to get a transition to get there. So this comes directly from harmony studies. Likewise, when it comes to orchestration, you may have to set an arrival, a climax, some major section, all the instruments that you need, the positions, and then budget your resources going backwards from there. It's baked directly into harmony studies. Now, if you want more in-depth information about the pitfalls of voicing across the phrases, I do have a short tutorial that you can check out at your leisure, but I'll just briefly summarize it. I highly suggest rewriting this part on a separate piece of paper, okay? I know it's a pain, okay, but just test it out on a separate piece of paper to make sure that it's going to be possible. So here, notice I rewrote the transition. As notice, the bass is moving by a 6, okay? So there are a lot of different possibilities. Usually you're going to keep the same note in common. So we could have the soprano staying on the same note. Or maybe we want to use this as an opportunity to have the soprano do a leap. Now, a couple strategies for voicing across two phrases. So bass is moving by a 6, so there are a number of possibilities for soprano. If the bass is leaping, which is the case here, we could keep the soprano on the same note. This can be very nice. Another possibility is we want to readjust the elevation to get to another part, because in French we call it le point de rassemblement. So fermatas are great points where you can readjust the spacing afterwards so it doesn't cause detriment to the listener. But definitely want to avoid leaping the same direction as the bass. If you want simpler harmony exercises, I do have some directly on my website. Go to level 1 if this is your first time and you don't want to deal with exceptions and modulations. If you want to do this exercise or to get the next part of the tutorial, then you can join the free community I have on School, which is an online learning platform. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. So notice here that for the 4-5 progression, I move the soprano back up. This is quite dangerous because we're moving in the same direction as the bass, and when you move in the same direction as the bass for stepwise motion, so here a 4 to 5, there is a high risk for parallel fifths and a high risk for parallel octaves.